Okay, inshallah, let's get started, sisters. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Uh, You guys can hear me okay, right? Yeah. Sister Maryam, I hope you're doing well. I saw your email. Very briefly, these kind of questions. So there is. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Hana.
Salam, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. In fact, Sister Maryam, Sister Hana, you both asked me similar questions. So for now, I'll just say the following that there is a primary ruling and a secondary ruling. I apologize, my voice is not the best right now. The primary ruling is what you know that you can't interact in a certain way with a non-mahram to look at I don't know to if your own body is not hijab is not maintained or you're looking at certain areas or touching a non-mahram is not going to be allowed. But then, because of necessity, these rules can be lifted. Okay, so it's basically it comes down to figuring out whether it is a necessity or not. And I think at least some ulama would be like, you'd get different answers here in as to how much ihtiyat scholars would do. But some of them would simply say that we need to have doctors, we need to have Muslim nurses. If this is part of the I don't know, necessary steps to practicing in the West, it may still be okay, maybe justified, and therefore it is allowed. But I'm not saying that's what everybody would say. There may be some people who would take a more ihtiyati approach and say, no, you really need to try your best in every situation to make sure the laws are followed, have a man with men patience, and so on and so forth. Okay? Okay, sisters, welcome to the final class, inshallah. I would recommend all of you to please, if you can turn on your camera. If you saw my email, inshallah, I gave an overview of what we want to do in this class. I apologize, there's a flu going around the city of Qom. Literally 50% of the city of Qom is sick right now. On Tuesday and Wednesday, they had canceled all the schools. And so as a result of this flu, my throat has somehow been affected. Inshallah, bear with me for this class. So, inshallah, what we want to do is, I hope you can still hear me fine, though, right? It's not too bad, I hope. Okay. Inshallah, what we want to do is quickly we'll go through the remaining mutahhirat. Again, I will talk about earth and sun and istihala, I think, which we already talked about. And then there's just a few more left. It won't take long. Inshallah, we'll be done in 15-20 minutes, I think. At which point I have a survey and an exam. They're both Google Forms that I would highly encourage you to right now, in the time that you have put aside for this class, fill out the survey. The survey in both the survey and the quiz, exam quiz, whatever you want to call it, is for us primarily. We want to know how the class went, how beneficial the class was. If you're interested in continuing, if you have any feedback, inshallah you can let us know through that. Okay, so let's get started then. This is the end of the chapter of Tahara. So by finishing this discussion on Mutahirat, we're basically done. The notes that I gave you have one more discussion about using the toilet, which is very straightforward. You can look at the notes. We're not going to go through that. Inshallah, we'll end with this discussion on Mutahirat. So the main one of the Mutahirat was water. We talked about that in detail. We won't go through that again. Quickly, let's look at the idea of earth. That when is earth? When is the ground a mutahhir? I was a little bit confused about it last week. Right now, I was looking at it again, so inshallah, it's clearer in my mind. It appears that this only applies to your bottom of your foot, bottom of your shoe, and that too when it becomes najis while you are walking on the earth. Okay, so I think one of the sisters had given an example that what if you're in the washroom? Your feet get najis. Can you just make it tahir by walking on the ground? No, that wouldn't work. It has to be najasa that while you are walking on the ground, some najasa sticks to the bottom of your foot. Then as you continue to walk, it becomes tahir. Some maraji' say that just by wiping it on the ground once even, or there's no amount that you have to walk. As long as you're walking on the ground and the najasa is removed, right away your foot becomes tahir. Ayatollah Khamenei has something that you should walk a minimum of 10 steps. Ayatollah Sistani seems to say the steps, or he says something about 7 meters in a Farsi Islamic laws book that I was looking at, but that was recommended. So for Ayatollah Sistani, it seems as soon as the najasa has been removed, it is tahir. But again, this is not very relevant. It's just if it happens when you're walking, then by continuing to walk, it can become tahir. Okay. The sun issue, I think we talked about it enough. I don't need to go through it again, but again, just a reminder, it only applies to three things: the ground, buildings, and trees and fruits on the tree. The last one of trees and fruits on the tree, Ayatollah Sistani has a ihtiyat wajib that it doesn't include this, but it's ihtiyat wajib. You could, Muqallideen of Sayyid Sistani can follow another marja. So these three things, if they become najis, you can just remove the najasa and make it wet. And if the sun directly shines on it and dries it, it becomes tahir. Okay. I'm going quickly because we talked about this. If there's no questions, I'll just move on. Of course, if you guys have any questions, any clarifications, feel free to ask. The remaining mutahirat are the following ones that you can see. There's one last one about animals that are eating najasa. I'll mention it at the end. It's not at all relevant. The main ones are these ones. Okay, all of these, as you'll see, they're not too common, but there are some instances where they apply, so we want to learn about them. One of them is the idea of istihala. I think we mentioned this last week. Istihala is that the substance that was najis completely changes and is now something else altogether. So it's now a new substance that is not najasa. So, for example, if you burn, they give some standard examples in the books of Islamic laws, burning something to ashes or decaying like a carcass of an animal that, I don't know, totally decays and just becomes earth. Um, Alcohol changing into vinegar. Okay, sometimes this is mentioned here under istihala. Sometimes it's mentioned as a separate name altogether. It's like a fiqhi discussion that if alcohol changes into vinegar, it becomes tahir. Okay, so these are different examples. And then Maraji, when they're saying this, they say, look, this doesn't mean there are other things that are not istihala that shouldn't be confused with istihala. For example, when you grind something into small pieces, that's one example of something that is definitely not istihala. So if you, I don't know, if you grind wheat into flour, if the wheat was najis, the flour is still going to be najis. That doesn't count as istihala. I'll quickly load up the Book of Islamic Laws, but yeah, that was basically it. Inshallah, that clarifies istihala. Now we have another three, five, six different things that we haven't talked about yet. So the first one is called intiqal. Intiqal is specifically about animals like mosquitoes. Okay, that's why there's a picture of a mosquito here in the slide. It's this idea of how blood, when it moves from a human being or something that's najis to an animal that is not najis. For example, mosquitoes. Okay, mosquitoes, if you remember, insects altogether, they're not najis. They're not an animal that has gushing blood. Their body is always tahir. So as soon as the mosquito sucks the blood from you, if, God forbid, a mosquito bites you, that mosquito is going to be tahir. If you kill that mosquito, even if a little bit of blood comes out and, a minute ago that blood was your blood, that's fine. Is now going to be tahir. I'm just going to load up the Farsi Risala and make sure I'm not missing anything, but basically that was the main discussion, I think. Um, yeah, just right here, I want to stop. There was one thing that I never told you guys that was a bit interesting that I thought I would. Um, Actually, there were a lot of questions also that were asked. I have the answers to some of them. But anyways, one of the things that I never told you guys was to do with water that is kur. If you remember, I was telling you that the water that comes out of pipes is kur water, right? Anything connected to core water has the same ruling as core water. Okay, so one interesting thing you could do is if you have a basin, you have, I don't know, even like a dish, if you turn the tap on, as long as the tap is on, the water in that basin is going to be treated like core water. Well, it's just kind of interesting rule. So like let's say I don't know, let's say you have clothes that have been made najis by urine. You could turn on the shower and have like a basin under, and as the water accumulates in that basin, the water in that basin is core water. And so you could wash the clothes in that basin once and it's done. I mean, you could put it right under the tap. So maybe it's not that practical. It's just something to know that as long as the tap is on and connected, it's going to be treated like core water. But then as soon as you turn the tap off, the water that's now in the basin is, if it's qalil, which it would be qalil, it has the ruling of qalil water. Okay. That was one thing that I thought I would mention before we come to Islam and the remaining ones. One second. There was also a list of questions that were asked. Some of them were important, so let me go through them. Um, Actually, I think the only question that was, yeah, Sister Hannah, you had also asked about how do you know, what do you do if you're not sure if somebody is not knowing the ruling or the implementation? Remember, we had that whole discussion about how you don't need to tell somebody that they're eating haram food unless you're sure they don't know the law. Normally, in normal situations, they've just made a mistake in figuring out which food is halal and haram. And in that situation, you don't need to tell them anything. So technically, the answer here, Sister Hannah, would be that you don't know if you have any obligation on you, right? In these situations, let's say you doubt that, okay, Mr. Zaid, who I know is a practicing Muslim, are they eating these Doritos or I don't know, whatever food because they don't know that a haram animal can be eaten? Or is it because they don't know that Doritos has haram food in it, for example? Okay. In that situation, you don't know that you have an obligation to tell the person, so you don't have to do anything. Okay. I think Sister Masuma or Sister Fatima, you had asked about eating from the store of an unreligious person, right? And even again, Sister Hannah, some weeks ago, you had asked about diglycerides and monoglycerides or something like that. All of these situations, maybe we could say there's a level of ihtiyat that you could do if you want to, but it's not something you have to do, definitely. And even there, whether that's really an ihtiyat that is of importance that we should really worry about, it doesn't seem to be, that big of a priority. At the end of the day, that's halal. You can eat these kind of foods that, for example, in the case of the monodiglycerides, what was it? It was food that could be from a plant source, and therefore you don't know that it's najis, and you're allowed to eat it. Okay? And then similarly, Sister Masuma, the going to a Muslim who is not religious, definitely you're still allowed to eat the food of a Muslim who's not religious. Okay? Okay, I think those were the only questions that I had written down. If yeah, Sister Hannah.
Sorry, just to clarify what you just said, so would you say it's like better for us to do ihtiyat, or it's not very like it doesn't matter if we do it or not? Like, and I'm just trying to wonder, in the
Okay.
sense, like I know it's halal, but some places I've read where it says, oh, it's better to avoid, or that type of ihtiyat. So like, would it like, let's say, spiritually affect if we don't really go it, if we don't really do the ihtiyat?
I don't think so. I think it would like when we think about spirituality, spirituality is based on Islamic laws, Islamic teachings. Here, the law has allowed us to do something, so you're following what the law is. It won't have a bad spiritual effect on you if you follow what the law says. So, if we say that ihtiyat is always something good, therefore you should do that here, it may be something that, you can do if you want to, but I wouldn't make a big deal about it. And I think that generally we have so many other things that are very clearly important that we want to emphasize and work on and not worry about, matters that are unnecessarily, I don't know, putting unnecessary ihtiyat on ourselves. Overall, that's what I got talking to one scholar. And perhaps again, like I was telling you in the issue of the beginning of the class, you may hear different answers from different scholars. Maybe some will be more ihtiyati and say, okay, it's really good, do ihtiyat if you can. But others may say what I'm saying, that, it's not that big of a deal. You're not breaking the law. Instead, focus on other things. You're just going to make your life so difficult. Monoglycerides, diglycerides are in a lot of foods, I heard. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. Okay, with that, we just have a couple of things left. Islam, the idea is that one of the a'yanun najisa, one of the intrinsic impure substances was a kafir. So how does that kafir become tahir? By accepting Islam. If they say the shahadatain, it doesn't have to be in Arabic. It's more the idea that they believe in the shahadatain, that there is only one God and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa is the Prophet. Then they become a Muslim. When they become a Muslim, their saliva and sweat and anything that was najis is now tahir. Taba'iyya, the idea of taba'iyya is that there are certain things that become tahir because of another thing. Okay, so it kind of just follows. The word taba'iyya means to follow. One common example that's given is when the people who are doing ghusl to a dead body, that body was najis, and so the bed that it's resting on is najis. The hand of the people who are giving it ghusl are najis. But as soon as they finish the third ghusl, the body becomes tahir, and anything else that was najis because of it, like the bed that it's on, the hand of the person washing it, it all just becomes tahir. Okay. Similarly, a lot of cases of making things tahir, I was kind of trying to tell you, sisters, that we don't need to be too precise about it. You just kind of mop up the water that was najis and it's now tahir. All of that, we could kind of explain it in a taba'iyya sense. That, okay, let's say, for example, I'll give you one example. Let's say you have a shirt that is najis and you pour a little bit of abi qalil on it and wring the water out, and now you're saying that shirt is now tahir. But there's still a little bit of dampness left in there, right? You could kind of explain it by saying no, whatever was left over in terms of the leftover wetness, now that you're done the wash and it's generally become tahir, whatever is left over also by taba'iyya it has become tahir. So that's something that you could kind of use it. I don't know if everybody would use that term taba'iyya in other instances, like what I just mentioned, but it has been used in that way. Um, Another example that's interesting is the idea of a child. A child, as soon as one of their parents accepts Islam, I think even one of their grandparents, a child that is not yet mumayyiz, maybe even not yet baligh, they automatically would they would become tahir as well if one of their parents or grandparents are a Muslim. So in that sense, it's an instance of taba'iyya. Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at Ayatollah Sistani's fatwa right here. Even if the grandmother or grandfather become Muslim, as long as one of the forefathers of a child is Muslim, that child has the hukum of tahara until they grow up and decide for themselves that are they going to be a Muslim or not. Okay. The next thing is there's a couple of instances where by simply just removing the najasa, that thing becomes tahir. There's two instances. One of them is the body of an animal. Okay? You don't need to put the body of an animal under the tap. Let's say that a cat, you have a cat around your house, or I don't know, you have some chickens or something. If there was blood on the body of the chicken and then the blood was removed, you don't need to go and wash it. Okay? If it, I don't know, somehow got najis, as soon as the najasa goes away from the body of an animal, it is tahir. If you now touch it with wetness, your hand, whatever you touch it with, is not gonna get najis. The other thing is the inside of the body. So, for example, our mouth, our nose as well, but the main thing would be the mouth. I think I mentioned this to you sisters earlier that in your mouth, as soon as you remove any najasa, in fact, najasa that develops inside the mouth is not even called najis. But anyways, you're not, for example, blood that comes out of your gums, it's not even called najis, but you're not supposed to swallow it. Okay, so if there was a najasa, let's say you had najasa on your finger and it entered your mouth, or I don't know, you ate something najis, how do you make it tahir? By simply removing the najasa, it becomes tahir. Just to get complicated, this was there in the notes if any of you looked at it. There is a discussion about fake teeth and like a root canal. If you have put like a crown on your tooth, does this apply? Does the same ruling apply or not? Ayatollah Khamenei has a nice, easy explanation here where he says that if the tooth is considered, like if whatever work has been done in your mouth is considered part of the natural tooth, so definitely a filling. But even maybe a crown, we could somehow, say that okay, it's like your tooth now. If it's like your tooth, then it just has the normal ahkam of not having to actually purify it. Otherwise, you have a problem where you actually have to like, gargle water once or twice, and like anything else, you would have to make your mouth tahir. Okay. The last thing, inshallah, is the idea of if you saw najasa on the body of a Muslim or on the clothes of a Muslim, and then the Muslim was absent for some time, and it was enough time that they could have gone and made their clothes, their body pure, then you don't need to worry about it. You can just treat it as if they actually made it pure and it's now gonna be okay. So just allow me to look at this from the book, make sure I'm not explaining it incorrectly. Um, yeah. Okay, so if you have yaqeen, you know for sure that a Muslim's clothing or their body or one of their property, one of the things they have basically has become najis, and then you don't see them for some time. And then, okay, there's one more condition here. Then when they're acting with that thing as if it's tahir. For example, it was their clothes and now they're praying with their clothes. Okay, it was on their body, now they're praying. If they're acting with it in a way that it should be tahir, like for example, they're praying with it, then you can just assume it's tahir. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. The last one is this idea, I didn't put it here, the idea of animals that eat najasa. Okay, since we have time, I'll quickly mention it. It's a discussion in fiqh. The Arabic word is called Jallal. The Hayawan al-Jallal. In Farsi, they call it Najasat Khar. It's an animal that exclusively eats the feces of a human being. Okay, if it eats like a chicken or I don't know, even a cow or a camel, I don't know how this would even happen. But let's say if you assume that this happens, in fiqh, this animal, if this happens for a period of time such that it's called an animal that's eating najasa, okay? Then there are certain ahkam that apply to this. The main ahkam are that you can't eat the meat of that animal. If it was a cow or a chicken or you normally you can just slaughter it in a halal way and eat the meat. In this case, you can't do that. It's haram. Even the urine and the feces, the excrement of that animal is going to be najis. Normally, if you remember, the urine and excrement of a halal animal was not najis. In this case, it is najis. And then there's even a discussion about the sweat of this animal. Ayatollah Sistani says, ihtiyat wajib, the sweat of this animal even is najis. So how do these animals come out of this state? You basically need to somehow, it's called istibra of the hayawan al-jallal, where you somehow give it normal food for a period of time. If it eats normal food for a period of time and it's no longer called, sorry, it's no longer called a hayawan, an animal that's eating najasa, then it becomes tahir. For some maraji, it's just simply about the urfi application of this name. That is it considered an animal that eats najasa or not? For other maraji, there are specific numbers for certain animals. For a camel, 40 days. For a cow, 20 days. For a sheep, 10 days. For a duck, 5 days. And for a chicken, 3 days. Okay? So some Marajas say you have to follow those numbers for those animals. Some Marajas say ihtiyat wajib, you should do that. Anyways, this whole discussion doesn't apply to us, so I won't go into it more, just it was for your information. Okay, sisters, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. If there's any questions at all, feel free to ask. Otherwise, even in the future, if you guys have any questions, you can always, inshallah, reach out to me. Right now, I will share like I said in the beginning, the survey and the exam. Okay, the survey, I think I need to change the settings of the exam. Give me a moment before you do the exam. I need to change the settings to actually record for the survey, we're not going to record who's filling it in. Okay, so you can say whatever you want. We're not going to know who's saying what. But for the exam, that doesn't make sense. So for the exam, I'm going to change the setting to ensure that we know who has answered what. And then if you want to actually get feedback, you can just message me and I can look at your exam. This first link that I just sent on the chat is the exam, and the second link is that I'll send right now is the survey. Okay. So yeah, just give me one moment for the exam. Let me change the settings on it. Okay. I think that should be it. I put verified. Okay. So yeah, now basically I think tell me if that's the case, but for the exam, it should force you to log in and it will somehow keep track of your email, your Google email address. But for the survey, that shouldn't be the case. Okay, sisters, thank you all for attending. Thank you for your time. Jazakumullah khair. I can stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to talk or has any questions. Otherwise, we are done, inshallah.
Hey, I have a question about you mentioned right now, it wasn't just in passing about mumayyiz, but like I wanted to ask about the actual ruling for that. So, for instance, let's say I have cousins who aren't baligh yet, but they're like old enough to understand things. So, would the same rulings of like hijab and thing apply in front of them, like all the rulings, or is it like is there a difference, I mean, like between
Mm,
how we would be in front of them versus a baligh person?
right. Give
Sorry,
me
it's
one.
unrelated to our
No
discussion.
problem. One second. I was once talking to somebody about this. Give me a moment. If I can just find something. But overall, the idea of mumayyiz means that they can discern something. Okay? And so in ahkam, in the laws of Islam, it it's somehow dependent on the discussion at hand. Okay, so the one aspect of mumayyiz is like, I don't know, you can't see their private parts, so you have to clothe yourself in front of them. Another aspect is, as you're saying, more to do with like hijab in front of men. So all of these, it would go back to whether that child, in this specific matter, can they differentiate and can they somehow, so hijab, okay, like is it something where like they're at that age where now they're, old enough to know, maybe not necessarily have feelings towards the opposite gender, but somehow are aware, attuned to it. Well, give me a moment. I may have something better to share with you. And then, so that's one part of your question is somehow answering or defining mumayyiz. The other question is, what is the ruling that do you actually have to, in front of a mumayyiz boy, do you have to wear hijab or not? Second, very strange. I'm like, I'm in trying to find something and it's just disappearing on me. Okay, yeah. So I was once giving advice to somebody and I talked to other ulama about it and then I gave this sister the advice. She was a teacher or it was more about um anyway, so it was about yeah, interactions between young children. Okay, at what age do we want to somehow restrict it? So I was saying to them that there is a loosely defined age where a boy starts to understand what a relationship is, what these feelings are. At this point, it is not encouraged to somehow this was about touching, okay, not just hijab but also about like I don't know, hugging a male cousin or something like that. And so I said that there's a certain age, it's kind of loosely defined, it's maybe not the same for one child even to another child, but as they start to like be old enough to differentiate between these things and appreciate the whole idea, then it's not encouraged anymore. Before this it's okay. Okay.
Would you say like not encouraged or like not allowed?
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. I wasn't sure if it was altogether haram. And I have some more points here that it seemed to me that it was ihtiyat. It wasn't saying very clearly that it's haram. Okay, so that was a conversation I had. I just found it. But let me just look right now. I'm sure if I spend a minute, and other sisters, if you guys want to go, you don't need to stick around. Our class is done. But let me just look on Sayyid Sistani's website. I might find something just right now.
Like for instance, while you look, I just want to clarify my question. Like I just mean like for example, if it comes to wearing hijab in front of them, is it the same exact rulings or can it be more of like a loosely like let's say if I um like I'm not wearing socks or something in front of my cousin, because normally you would have to have the feet covered and everything covered. Just I'm
Mm,
just trying to understand like if it's the same level of strictness because they're not baligh yet.
yeah. So here it seems to be strict, but again, I would just want to still double check it. There's one question I'm looking at right here that says, what is the ruling of oh, this is no, this is touching. Um, mm, yeah, see. It says so it's like the what I'm seeing here is something like this, Sister Hannah, that it's necessary to wear hijab to cover yourself in front of a mumayyiz boy according to ihtiyat if there is a chance that it could somehow, like I said, like he has these kind of feelings or he's developing these feelings, then based on ihtiyat, you should wear hijab. Okay, so it was very ihtiyati. I wouldn't be surprised that it's not, even if we look at other maraji', it might not be something that's clearly haram, but it's more something like, advised. Like if I'll look into it a bit more if I can, and if I find anything, I'll message you, inshallah.
Thank you. And was that ihtiyat like ihtiyat wajib?
Yeah, yeah. If it just
Okay.
says ihtiyat like that, it would be ihtiyat wajib.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for the classes. It was really beneficial.
No problem, no problem. If I do find something, I guess I'll send it to your brother. I don't know if I have your contact
I think I have I've messaged you a few times. I can message you the question just to remind you which number is mine.
Yeah, sure. Another. I just searched online and I found a question to Ayatollah Khamenei about this exact thing. Is it? Yeah, exactly this. That can a woman not wear a rusari, like a hijab in front of a boy who's mumayyis? And then it says ihtiyat wajib. So Ayatollah Khamenei thinks it's ihtiyat wajib that basically she covers herself in front of him if he's reached the level that he somehow, yeah, okay, this idea exactly what I'm saying.
Okay,
Yeah, that he
thank you.
had kind of feelings that he's developing. So it seems that maybe it's a common thing that they're saying ihtiyat wajib, you should uh, wear hijab. Okay, Sister Mariam, you had a question?
Yeah, so I was just speaking to one of my family members, and they were telling me how when they were younger, it had to do with ghusl. They didn't know that ghusl actually had like specific steps to it. They used to think that ghusl was just a bath or a shower until they grew up and they learned like no, there's actually like certain steps for that.
Mm.
So and we were just talking and she was wondering like, does that mean that that period when she was doing ghusl incorrectly, does that mean like her salah during that period is like invalid or her fasts, etc.?
I think she's okay because Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi allows ghusl in that way. For him, the order is mustahab, but the only thing that's required is that you wash your whole body, basically. So if you consider him to be one of the a'lam maraji', I think they should be okay.
So is the steps for ghusl for Ayatollah Sistani, is that ihtiyat?
No, the first part is a fatwa, I think, but still, there was this idea that in the beginning I was trying to tell you, sisters, that at the end of the day, if you consider them all to be a'lam, then it doesn't really matter who you follow, if you have that understanding that they're all a'lam.
Mm, okay.
Um, but I think that should be fine then. Yeah. Uh,
Like,
or
okay.
if you want what I could do, so like the person probably follows Said Sistani, right? I could officially send a question to the office of Ayatollah Sistani. We could see what they say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to follow that question, similar situation, but what if you didn't know a certain ghusl was obligatory? Like, what if you didn't know that ghusl hayd was something that you had to do? Does that also mean that during that period that you did not do that, that your acts of
Mm.
worship are invalidated?
I'll have to get back to you about that. I'm not sure about that one.
So, yeah, thank you.
So I have your email address now, inshallah. Write these down and try to get back to you, inshallah.
Okay, sorry. For when you're doing wudu,
Hmm.
if let's say the water that you are already using in wudu, like for example, from your face or your arms, falls on your legs, like on your feet, do you still have to wipe that before doing the mess of the feet, or is that
Yeah, it's a lot of water that's gonna like do. I think we probably mentioned this that when the parts that you're wiping, they can't be wet.
mm-hmm.
So, there's a couple of things that may have happened. Maybe it just water fell on one part of your foot that if you wipe the other part, you've still wiped enough. Because for your foot, just one finger's width is enough, right?
Yes.
Well, that maybe if that's okay, then you don't need to worry about it. Or if it's still just like it's not so wet, it's just like a little bit of dampness. But I guess if water fell on your foot, no, it's not a little bit of dampness. So then yeah, in that situation you should dry your foot before you do masah.
Even if it's the same like water from the wudu, like from the face or the legs, right? I mean,
Right.
from the arms.
I think so because
Okay.
like it needs to become wet by the wiping, not just by dropping water on it.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sisters, inshallah, do fill out, no problem, Sister Masuma, do fill out the quiz and the survey, inshallah. If there's nothing else, we can end the class. No problem. في أمان الله. التماس الدعاء.